name is Kati Cabral. I'm from Chelsea, Massachusetts. I am currently on Chelsea School Committee representing District 5, and full-time I work as a recruitment and retention manager. And to give you a little bit of context of where we are, we're right here in Copley, and right behind, you'll see the John Hancock building. It's kind of behind these trees, but it's actually the place where my mother's worked for more than 25 years. She and my father worked as janitors, and so this is really crucial to my own story, and really excited to share more of my own story and education and how I arrived here too.
That's awesome. Okay, where are we headed?
So we're headed to Boston Common. So we're gonna take you for a ride. This is a bit different format, but I'm excited to be on the swap with you today.
Interesting to me that you are a fashionista. Is that a good term
We try. You know, we're definitely a fashionista on a budget. So.
I mean, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. Especially in this day and age.
Absolutely, and I think it's like, for me, clothing and the way that you wear your hair is an expression of self. And so I've always really appreciated people's sense of style and what that might mean for, their own background and how our social political moment impacts what we wear too.
And when did you tie in fashion and politics? That's the impression I'm getting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was around more so college where I realized that it could be a statement. In that I used to, in the beginning of college, I used to wear more like androgynous clothing where
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. On clothing that didn't really seem either feminine or masculine. And I really I usually wore things that just felt comfortable to me. And I loved utility, so making sure that I felt comfortable. And as someone who's very petite, making sure that things were tailored to me. And thank goodness to my mom, who would always tailor my clothing. I realized that I really appreciated being able to wear clothing that I felt most comfortable in. And in college, I feel like I was exposed more to like the LGBTQ community and what that meant, and saw that it was becoming more of a political statement to wear, what was most comfortable to people. And for some, it was seen as retaliation or resistance. And I do believe clothing can be that. And so when I walk into a space and I wear my hair as it grows out of my head, some people might see it as unprofessional, and I really believe it's just being authentically me.
Do you come here often in the Boston Commons?
I love picnics.
Yeah.
So oftentimes with friends, I have like a picnic bag ready at my home, and we usually bring wine for those up 18 and over or 21 and over on YouTube, and some snacks too, to really just like bask in the sunshine. I love being outside, and if I can spend a day doing a picnic with friends, that's definitely one of my favorites.
What is your experience growing up in Chelsea?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Chelsea all my life, and I've been living in the same house actually. I moved one other house in Chelsea, but primarily I've been in the same house even till now. And I'm largely surrounded by many Spanish-speaking families. A lot of the families in Chelsea originate from Central America, the Caribbean, and West Africa. And my family immigrated from the Dominican Republic in the 80s. And so that was really a defining moment for me in Chelsea, growing up surrounded by many Hispanic families. And ultimately, I ended up attending all Chelsea public schools, where in my earlier years I was part of a dual language program, and so being able to speak Spanish at home and use both languages at school was such a monumental moment for me to know that both of these languages can exist in harmony, and that educators saw both parts of me, right? When I think about being Dominican American or Afro-Latina, I usually live in that hyphen. And so language was really huge for me growing up. And many of these Hispanic families in Chelsea are considered low income or first generation. And so that was many of my experience as I navigated Chelsea public schools, and ultimately joined the track and field team, did book club, and was the student representative on Chelsea School Committee. And so succeed in a lot of things in Chelsea High School. And now, as a professional, I get to come back to my community, and I used to teach 7th and 8th grade science and now serve on Chelsea School Committee, part of District 5, and as their vice chair now.
It's kind of like your day-to-day responsibilities.
As a full-time recruitment and retention manager for a charter school in Lynn, I'm often connecting with so many amazing educators from across Massachusetts and really across the United States. And I get to connect with them about the open positions and supports that we have. So I am, really rounded by being able to touch base with so many diverse educators of color who are now part of KIPP charter schools, and also get to connect with many community members from Chelsea. And so a lot of my day-to-day routine consists of meeting with folks and learning about what their skill set and what their passions are, and how they might find themselves a home in Lynn or in Chelsea.
As a recruitment and retention manager, what strategies do you employ to attract and select diverse, high-quality candidates for KIPP?
Yeah, so first off, we call that sourcing. So being able to find diverse, qualified, and skilled candidates, we'll usually start by looking at our pipeline of fellows. So KIPP has a fellowship program where it's a gradual release program where folks who are either just coming out of their undergraduate degree or are in their first years of teaching may participate in our fellowship program, where they'll be placed in a kindergarten classroom and be able to co-lead a class, and ultimately be able to lead a class by the end of their first year. And so that is our main pipeline to getting skilled, diverse educators. It might also look like looking at our different platforms. So there's several platforms that we use, including LinkedIn, Indeed, Smart Recruiters. We try to find folks who are certified and who have different passions and areas of growth too. So those are our main ways. But notice that my role not only talks about recruitment, but also retention, right? If we're retaining our teachers, supporting them, then we will have to recruit less. And I think that, that is why I joined KIPP, and why I'm so passionate about education, is making sure that the teacher leaders that are supporting our youth have the necessary supports to do just that. I knew that as a Black Latina, there was a nuanced approach and support that I needed when I was in the classroom. And now I get to do that with newer teachers and veterans alike. So that is part of the role, and so it may look like touching base one-on-one with my school leader to identify what's the specific context at our school. What are some vacancies, and who can we better support in day-to-day before being able to look externally and seeing the supports that we have there too.
You mentioned support. What does support mean for you?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. So at KIPP, some supports that we offer within our own school is we may provide resume review support. So if there is a teacher leader that wants to continue to develop, become a grade level chair, or an instructor, or an assistant principal, we may offer them a resume review and a mock interview support to ensure that they have support when they go and interview for that role. It also might look like getting vouchers and financial support to pass MTELs. For those of you who don't know what MTELs are, they are tests that you have to take in Massachusetts to become a licensed teacher. And for many of our educators of color, they on average have to take more attempts of the test in order to pass it. And so it's really important that many schools across Massachusetts continue to instill vouchers to cover the financial cost of the MTELs, as well as tutoring and study resources. It may also look like getting one-on-one support from your coach. So here at KIPP, we have this one program called the Good to Great program, and it's usually for teachers in their first or second year, and they're able to practice their teacher moves all while being in the classroom, and they'll be able to deliver their lesson in front of other teachers so that they can have a feel for, okay, how can I in real time know I'm being clear, concise, and effective too.
In your experience as the school committee vice chair, how do you ensure that policies align with district priorities and contribute to the highest quality of education for students in Chelsea?
Absolutely. So as a school committee member, there are 4 different subcommittees that you get to be a part of, and you get to select 2 of the 4. So this past year, I was able to be on both the budget and finance subcommittee in addition to the curriculum and instruction. And so as school committee members, we can add items to the agenda that we think is of importance. And if there is another topic that doesn't relate to one of those subcommittees, we might start to add you can attend other subcommittee meetings, including the policy and procedures and human resources. And so as a school committee member, you can add something to the agenda that is of importance, and you can ask central office to offer more insight, data analysis, and recommendations based on questions that are offered by school committee. And so we use this as our primary way to make change in policy at the schools. For example, we had the mask mandate back in 2021. This was something that was really tough for many schools to navigate, and so we were able to use subcommittee meetings to discuss and weigh our options of what is going to be the impact of the policy that we apply to our schools. And ultimately, with co-authorship from many of our community members weighing in with the recommendations by our central office, we were able to decide at the end of 2022 to close and to pause the mask mandate. And we were actually one of the last communities to do this, but I think that we have to consider the context of Chelsea as one of the major cities that's hit by the pandemic. And so this is something we're still grappling with now, and that we as school committee members are continuing to advocate for to ensure that our students are getting the quality education they deserve following the years in the pandemic too.
How do you approach providing fiscal oversight of a significant budget like the one in Chelsea Public Schools? And what measures do you take to ensure financial accountability?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually just went through our budget process most recently, and this looks like having conversations with our community. So we had several meetings in our middle school and within our library to discuss what is most prominent for families today to combat and to ensure that our students have joyful, safe learning environments. And so during these conversations, our head of finance was able to discuss, what as we come out of the pandemic and are also offshoring some of the budget from the state. We are no longer receiving benefits from this COVID benefits. So I'm forgetting the name of it now.
The bill that was kind of like the COVID relief that was passed early in 2021.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That went to many communities that were hard hit by the pandemic, and so this allowed many schools to hire additional teachers, making sure we have additional paraprofessionals, mental health counselors, and we recognize that many of these roles are still crucial to our classrooms today. So we wanted to make sure that we added these to our foundational budget, and making sure that these roles still carried on in the roles that they were in. So with that said, we're still grappling with not having enough funding in the coming year. Like, there are a couple roles that we have to think through to ensure that we're meeting and breaking even in many respects. And so there's actually a bill that's in the House that I'll have to include later, where the state is asking, okay, we are coming out of this COVID relief fund. Are there any other supports that can be offered by the state to ensure that our students get the necessary and the education they deserve? And so many of these community meetings are how we provide oversight. The central office will also provide a budget a budget presentation where they'll give an overview of where most of our funds go, which is to our to ensuring that we have the necessary roles and teachers in place, in addition to having our building infrastructure to have our students in. And so with that said, there's also a period of public comment where folks in our community can discuss what may be impacting them and what they think about this budget. And so these are primary ways and oversight that school committee and the community at large offers for budget oversight.
Now well, I learned a couple of things there, a lot of things there that I didn't know, that we were running basically on temporary funds, essentially.
A
portion of it, right? Do you think that's going to cause a significant gap in your ability to recruit and in resources, essential resources that you might need?
Because we're anticipating this shift away from our COVID funds, this is something that the district is proactively, attempting and proactively recruiting for. And so we recognize that there are roles that we've shifted into our foundational budget, and so those are covered. And the ones that are still under like the COVID relief fund, that's something that we're proactively and strategically
looking to replace.
Exactly, and to ensure that, because we know that those educators are making such a huge impact. There were students in our last meeting. We were able to discuss many of the improvements of our students, and there were so many students that were able to improve their grade level reading and their numeracy skills due to the fact that they had crucial educators that were there to support them, to stay for tutoring hours, to communicate with families. And so we understand the value that those educators and the additional COVID relief funds brings. And so we're finding additional grants. We're being strategic about ensuring that, okay, if there's a resource that we can share, like mental health counselors, if they can be supporting different campuses throughout the school year, this is something that we're looking towards. And also, ensuring that the ratio of students to counselors is still within a range to make sure those kids get individualized support.
So you have good student counselor to student range that's healthy levels,
Yes.
right? So they're not overwhelmed.
Exactly. Yep.
So on a more personal note, I did stumble upon a poem that you wrote called Born to Rebel, and you have it on YouTube. So I want you, if you like, to talk a little bit about that poem. It seemed to be related to your college experience, and talk a little bit about what motivates you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote that poem as the class poet in 2020. That's when I graduated from my undergraduate institution. I went to school in Maine, in Lewiston, Maine, and that poem has the same name as an autobiography of the first Black president of our college. And so it was really important to me that I had a message that resonated not only with a leader that was making their own friends, and I actually want to, if you don't mind me reading a couple words from that poem.
Hey, this is your time.
I wrote down a couple notes here.
Yeah.
So part of that poem, it reads, I walked by Benjamin E. May Center, and I recall his words, I must take my education into my own hands. His legacy, a reminder to us all that we are authors of our own stories. Now, as we start our next chapter, I encourage us to rebel. And with that said, asking my peers at the time to make sure they rebel. And really it's to be authentically themselves. And a time like now, being authentically yourself can be seen as a point of resistance. And that's something really important to me, that we continue to carve our own path and not be defined by a single story. And so that's what I wanted my peers to remember, and that's something that motivates me now to ensure that when I walk into the classroom, that people remember, like, Miss Cabral was there to support me, and that I'm someone who can look like a teacher, right? And I hope that I can encourage other students that look like me or have a similar story to know that they too can be in a position of leadership. And despite the odds, right? And so that is something that continues to push me as a school committee member to ensure that I try to take in and be aware of so many perspectives within our community. And I know that our community continues to grow, right? There's folks that may have different stories than me, and that's something that I want to continue to consider as I visit our schools when folks come to public comment. And I hope that folks can continue to remember that they can continue to rebel and be authentically themselves too. All right, so one last thing before I go, I did want to mention that this November I'll be running to represent Chelsea at large on school committee, and I would love your support this fall at the ballot and ensuring that we continue to have educators that reflect our students' experiences, that we have folks that will ask critical questions, and ensuring that going forward we have the best education that our students deserve. I'm always humbled to represent this community and really grateful for this opportunity to be part of school committee again. So thank you so much for your support. I'm looking forward to seeing y'all November 7th.